Hi, I'm Laura Flanders. This week on the show, Democracy Now! Host Amy Goodman on the importance of independent media and a revolutionary Latina women's bicycle crew. Welcome to the Laura Flanders Show, where the people who say it can't be done take a backseat to those who are doing it. The world economy is hurtling from one centered on industry and the production of stuff to one centered on knowledge and the exchange of services and ideas. Will that future economy be a caring or a cruel one? If ideas are at the heart, nothing is more important than the men and women who control the spread of ideas. The old media was driven by and for profits. So what will the new one be driven by? More importantly, what will it stand for? Amy Goodman is the host and executive producer of Democracy Now!, a national, daily, independent, award-winning news program airing on over 1,400 public television and radio stations worldwide. She's co-authored 6 New York Times best-selling books, including Breaking the Sound Barrier and The Silenced Majority, Stories of Uprisings, Occupations, Resistance, and Hope. Her latest book is Democracy Now!, 20 Years Covering the Movements Changing America. Amy, 20 years. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Laura. It is hard to believe. I mean, 20 years ago, this was not our plan. The plan was we were the only daily election show in public broadcasting in 1996, the day after the election. We would end the show and go on to another project. But there was more demand for the show after the election than before. And I think that was because of the hunger for independent voices. And the fact that, when I got the call to be the host of the show,
I was in
Haiti. I was in a safe house covering people fearful that if they declared for office, they would be gunned down. If they went to vote, they would be gunned down. And yet most people voted in Haiti. In our country, I get this call and say, most people don't vote. Why bother? But I didn't think it was apathy. And I was really challenged by this idea. People care in the United States if they know. That's the issue, if they know.
That's right.
And also, what were people doing in their communities? Why wasn't it getting covered? And so that's why we use the primary system as a way to go to the states and see what people were saying. And I think it was that hunger for authentic voices, not the know-nothing pundits.
So a lot of people want to know not just about the origins of the program, but your origins. You didn't just spring fully made into the set of Democracy Now! What can you tell us about who gave you the idea that you could do this work? Who inspired you the way you inspire us?
My family had a tremendous influence on me, my mother and my father. My dad was a local ophthalmologist, and he not only was a great visionary as an eye doctor, but he was chosen as the head of the task force to integrate our schools. We had a diverse community, but we had the railroad tracks. And how would we go to school together, black and white together? And I went with him to the auditoriums and cafeterias of our community. I was in 5th grade. He had death threats against him, 1,000 screaming parents. But he just judiciously navigated our community through a very difficult place. And my mom taught women's history and literature at local community colleges. And, it would be local cops and firefighters, truck drivers who would take it so that they could make more money, more credit, more money for their salaries. And so they would go through the course offerings and, chick lit, like women's literature. Nothing could be easier. I'm going to take that class. So they'd come into Dorothy Bach Goodman's class, and she would introduce them to Toni Morrison and Virginia Woolf. And this is the beginning of the women's liberation movement, and they would be reading these books. That's why my wife is so angry at me. That's why my daughter won't talk to me anymore. And soon they'd be bringing their wives and daughters. By the end of the class of a semester, the room would be packed to the rafters with whole families. And then she decided to go into family therapy. She was a very resilient woman. But my parents were great role models for me and my brothers. And, my extracurricular activity at school, junior high school, was the newspaper. And I saw, as my brothers did, how, you write an editorial and suddenly the principal has to answer your demands. And then we took it to a bigger stage after that. In high school it's the principal, and now it's the president.
We should say that the book is co-authored by one of your brothers, David Goodman, and also Dennis Moynihan, of course. Introducing people to each other is kind of what we do, I think, in the media at our best. But there needs to be a door open to get into an institution that supports you and helps you grow in this business. For you and me, I think it was WBAI. It's not been easy keeping that publicly owned community station alive. And it's part of a network that's seen its share of troubles. Can you talk about that? Why do you think it's been so hard?
I mean, it is so important, Pacifica's roots, going back to World War II and the first Pacifica station, KPFA in Berkeley, founded by a war resister who came out of the detention camps named Lou Hill, who said there's got to be a media outlet not run by corporations that profit from war, but run by journalists and artists. And that's how Pacifica was born. KPFA, the first station, in 49 in Berkeley, KPFK in 59 in Los Angeles, our station, New York, WBAI in 1960. 1970 KPFT in Houston, and 1977 WPFW in Washington. That's the Fab Five. That's the Pacifica Radio Network.
And a lot of people talk about crowdsourcing today as if it's a new thing, but that's how they were founded.
Oh, I mean, that's amazing, right? I mean, couldn't have had a more difficult beginning. KPFA, first of all, they're on the air on FM. It's in its infancy. So you had to have a special radio. It was called the Subscriber. And finally you get this and you tune in and someone's asking you for money. I mean, that is not a way to begin. And yet they did, and it grew. The KPFT in Houston in 1970, in the spring it goes on the air, and within a few weeks it's blown off the air by the Ku Klux Klan.
Literally.
Right.
You write about it in the book.
Blow it up right in the middle of Arlo Guthrie singing Alice's Restaurant, which I thought was a good song. And they finally go back on the air after a few weeks. They rebuild the transmitter, and the Klan straps 15 times the dynamite to the base of the transmitter and blows it up again. After many months, they get back on the air in January of 71, and at this point, it becomes a national story. PBS, in its infancy, comes in to cover it. Arlo Guthrie comes back to Houston to finish his song, Alice's Restaurant, on the radio, and they go back on the air. And, you know, it was the Klan. It was the Klan, the Grand Dragon, the Exalted Cyclops, I can't remember who, but there was a reason why they targeted it, because of the independent voices.
Right.
When you hear someone speaking for themselves, a Palestinian child or an Israeli grandmother, an Afghan aunt, an Iraqi uncle, it immediately challenges the stereotypes and the caricatures that fuel the hate groups. I'm not saying you'll agree with what you hear. How often do we agree with our family members? But you begin to understand where someone is coming from. You don't want to destroy them. Yeah. That understanding is the beginning of peace. I think the media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Instead, all too often, it is wielded as a weapon of war. And that's why we have to take the media back.
We've talked a lot about form so far, but what about content? You have to balance breaking news and responding to that in a different way from the way the other people do, with a knowledge that the changes that are required are systemic and need a deep answer, not a quick one. How do you decide what to put on the air?
Well, we made a decision early on. We wanted to do a daily show to be part of the national conversation, and things do switch so quickly every single day. But there are trends, and it's not only bringing out the voices of grassroots activists on the ground, but then also looking at, the movements and how they're growing. And that's the big story, that even in this election year, where we see the power of movements. I mean, Bernie Sanders did not create this tidal wave he is riding.
Although if you watch the money media, you would certainly get that idea.
Right, because the movements don't hit the corporate media radar screen.
I don't think they know how to cover them.
For a long time, right? Only when they have a leader. And they tried to ice out Bernie Sanders himself, but then it became absolutely ludicrous. I mean, as late as Super Tuesday 3, which was March 15th, that was the day of 5 primaries. You had Florida, Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, and North Carolina. You had the day that Marco Rubio pulled out because he lost Florida, remember, Senator Rubio. You had the day that was the same day as Ohio Senator John Kasich won his first primary. Ultimately, he would pull out. Illinois and Missouri, Sanders and Clinton were neck and neck. And they played every speech of every candidate in full, as they should have, right? They had Trump and Rubio, Cruz, Kasich, and Clinton. Oh, wait, Bernie Sanders? Here, they were neck and neck. And did Bernie Sanders fall asleep? Did he take the evening off? He was giving the biggest speech that night in Phoenix, Arizona, before thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. They didn't even speculate, where is Bernie tonight? Right. So we decided that night, the next day on Democracy Now!, we're going to play an excerpt of his speech. Who would have thought it was a revolutionary act to play the speech of a major party candidate on a major primary night?
And that is still covering the speech of the leader and the personal driver of the story, not the movements that fed into his campaign and what's brought him this far, right?
Right. He didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, this is 2016. Look at 2011 just for a moment. Of course, we could go further back than that, but Occupy. Yeah. That is the movement that he is riding. And yes, the police eviscerated the Occupy encampments. And for the media, that was the end of the Occupy encampments because the physical manifestation of them wasn't there anymore.
Once they covered that.
But after that, movements work in all different ways. They surface, they get submerged, they surface again. And Occupy also became Black Lives Matter, the immigrants' rights movement, all the issues, the fight for 15, all of the issues that equality raises. And as they're morphing in all different ways, you have a presidential candidate that gives voice to them. And so he has all of these movements that are really there, and he rode that wave. And it's very important, I think, when we look at movements and electoral politics to see what's going to happen now.
I was talking to a great group of student journalists the other day and asking them about the nature of American democracy. Some of their views, let's just say, were fairly cynical, but who can blame them? What's your vision of how the media could give people a richer sense of their own potential to make change, to make a difference?
When we cover War and Peace, not to have media brought to us by the weapons manufacturers. I mean, how many times do you watch Sunday talk shows on the networks and they say, we'll be back to discuss how quickly we should bomb Syria or Yemen after this commercial from McDonnell Douglas or from Lockheed Martin or from Boeing. I mean, to have a media that's not brought to you by the weapons manufacturers when we cover war, to have a media that's not brought to us by the oil, gas, and coal companies when we cover climate change, not brought to you by the insurance industry when we cover healthcare, it is so obvious and so important. Independent media is the oxygen of a democracy. And I think we're seeing this develop all over, people looking for something else.
We asked our friends on Facebook for suggestions of questions for you, and they were all over the map, but they did fall into a few clear categories, mostly having to do with who do you pick to put on the show. A lot of questions about why don't you have more women of color? Why don't you have more discussion of disability, of Palestine, of sex work? And then a lot of people wondering how you look after yourself. What's your self-care regimen? Do you have one? And how do you handle having so many people wanting you to be everything to all of them?
We don't do enough of anything, I think. And we always strive every day to bring out the diverse voices on so many different issues. And every day we work. And this is, what did they call Pacifica at the beginning? A noble experiment. And that's what I see Democracy Now! As. And we can do better every which way. And so we welcome people's suggestions. I mean, when we're on the tour, everywhere we go, make suggestions, issues we should cover, people we should talk to, be specific, give their contact information. That's how we learn. That's how we bring out this great diversity of voices that we can do better on every day.
And the self-care?
That's a very interesting question. I was invited on the Bill Maher show a couple weeks ago, and who was there but Arianna Huffington? And, she's the sleep guru.
That's right.
And I wanted to challenge her to a duel, on the merits of sleeplessness. Yes. But she wasn't having anything of it. And I really did say, in June or whenever in the summer, I'm going to take a long nap. But I don't know, there isn't time.
Amy Goodman, thanks so much for coming in and for your work on radio, on television, and all of your books. For all of you who don't know what you need to know about Democracy Now!, check out our website. We'll post some links.
Thank you.
The Ovarian Psychos Bicycle Brigade is an unapologetic, feminist, all-women of color bicycle crew based in East LA, and it's the subject of a new documentary by the same name. Chela de la X is the founder of the Ovarian Psychos, as well as being a poet, an MC, and a mom. Andy Soch is another OVA leader and a street artist who's responsible for much of the look of the crew. And Johanna Sokolowski is co-producer and co-director of the film, along with her filmmaking partner, Kate Trumbull-Laval. Did I get your names more or less right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
good. All right, good. So let's start with, Ovarian Psychos. What are they? Who are they? You came up with the idea. Go for it.
Yeah, well, we're a bicycle collective, and we utilize the bicycle to address certain issues in our community, and to connect the dots as well, and to have a space, and not so much to make the streets safe, but to make them even that much more dangerous for the rapist, or for the potential pedophile, or, for a cop, or, for a gentrifier.
Your movie opens with a wild kind of cross between, I don't know, Easy Rider and Born in Flames. Women on bikes in the streets of East LA. How did you get wrapped up in this film project?
Kate, my filmmaking partner, was actually working on a film called No Mas Bebes, and it's about the forced sterilization of Mexican origin women in East Los Angeles. And they were looking for outreach partners, and somebody mentioned the Ovarian Psychos would make a good outreach partner. And we were looking for a film, and she called me, and there was a few articles online, and they had a great Facebook presence, and we were just completely enamored with them and with their politics. And the opening that you're referencing is sort of something that we imagined from the very beginning. It's kind of like when you first hear about them, the place that your imagination goes.
Yeah. Let's play a trailer so people get a sense of it, and they'll understand immediately why you went for both this group and the scene. Take a look.
Ovarian Psychos is a refuge for the runaway, for the throwaway. I understood that being an at-risk youth, now an adult, I'm still an at-risk adult. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't go away, right? And so where are the spaces for us? We're just that safe space for each other, to bring comfort, to bring a sense of family.
Well, that's just the trailer from the new film, Ovarian Psychos. We have two of the psychos with us in the studio and the filmmaker. Andy, let's bring you into this story. How did you get wrapped up with the Ovarian Psychos?
A couple of the girls that I knew at the time were very into cycling, and one day we found out that there was a Ovarian Psycho meeting happening, and we felt so compelled to just be part of it because we wanted to start our own collective as well. So we just decided to just, come together, and we came to the first Luna ride, which is now called the Luna Death Ride, because we were all so excited. There was just so much energy. It was a full moon, and tragically, Chela had a really bad accident. She ended, I don't know, she's laughing. It was so scary, dude. It was so scary. She ended up cracking her skull, and
2.5 inches.
Yes, and we literally all came together, and we saw her on the floor, literally with her eyes rolled back, and
yeah, it was great. Bloody.
It was just
shocking,
super shocking and terrifying, and a lot of the women didn't come back because.
Oh, I was going to say it's one hell of a way to build community.
Yeah,
people didn't come back.
But you know what? I think it was because of that tragedy that really bonded us. Yeah. We all walked all the way back to where her house was, where some of us left our stuff, and all the way back. It was very somber mood, but it just brought us together even more.
Yeah, you were sisters at that point.
Yeah, it literally that night built sisterhood and just
even your story is so perfect for this film, because the film, it's all of that stuff that you describe in the first scene and all those feelings you provoke in that very beginning, but it's also very deep. I mean, biking in LA, women, East LA, Latina women of color, there's a lot wrapped up in this. Where do you want to begin? I mean, maybe begin with some of the statistics around violence in the lives of the women in your community, because it's maybe, sadly, not well enough known for people.
No, yeah. There's so many. 1 out of 3 women will have gone through some type of sexual abuse in their lifetime. 1 of 3 also, what is it, like some type of violence, right? They would have experienced some type of violence. I don't know.
You had 1 out of 3 leave their home, run away at a certain point.
Yeah.
I mean, we learn in the film this is your story,
right?
To no small degree. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I come from a household, very violent. My parents, they didn't have access to parenting classes, right? And so, being migrants themselves, they didn't have a lot of access, period, to resources. And so I don't fault them to a degree, but at the same time, I feel like it's really important to understand like the bigger picture of it. And the bigger picture of it is always white supremacy at the end of the day, And so it really kind of like, it really affects us, to on every level, right? From the fact that my parents, they had these fucked up jobs. I'm sorry, can I say that? Yeah, fucked up jobs, and then on top of that, I'm dealing with like all types of, self-medicating, using drugs, using alcohol, and and so our community does that as well, right? But I think that it's really important to understand the legacy of white supremacy and how it continues to affect us even today, right?
And that's this material of the film. I mean, there is the joy of the bike riding, but there's also this serious drumbeat around questions of class and race and white supremacy and immigration and violence.
Right.
I was very struck in the meeting scene that you have in the film, where you talk about I guess it's the guidelines for the meetings, it's kind of principles too. There's a line in there where you say oppression exists, but not here. Right. What does that mean to you, Andy?
Definitely, it's saying like all the bullshit that we deal with outside of Ovarian Psychos, we cannot bring it in here because that would be the downfall of like our existence as psychos, as sisters. So I feel that we really tried to just live by our own rules, and sisterhood was definitely just something very strong that, I don't know, we found comfort in each other and finding a...
You want to add anything to that, Chella?
No, yeah, definitely. I feel like with that sentiment of oppression exists but not here, I think that we can have a tendency to reenact that oppression. You know what I'm saying? We can have a tendency to be oppressive with each other because that's all we've known, right? And so I think it's very important to be intentional in being able to check
ourselves.
It.
Yeah, check ourselves
and make sure that we don't.
Yeah, and we have like a way of handling issues like that. We if someone has like some sort of beef with each other, we try to get a mediator and just
we call her the clit rubber
or clit checker
or clit check.
Yeah, we changed it from clit checker and we thought it was to clit rubber.
That sounds good.
Counterclockwise. Yeah.
You're also a poet. You want to share a poem?
Sure. Let's see. It's more of a rap. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. It's undeniable the power that the masses of our people hold. We're taking this underground like the railroads, breaking the chains of mind control, successfully escaping this society of Satanists. Envision this, the final overthrow, reclaiming everything we always had but never knew we owned, off the blood and sweat of broken backs, bought and sold. But now we be the powerful and still the world turns rhythmical, like the cycles of a season, like a collective conscious shift in reason, bringing an end to what we know on earth as we embrace the birth, the dreams deferred, the worth, the words that first disturbed, the yearn to learn the truth that burns as we return to ancient wisdom. We be like heathens fighting for our freedom, from the oldest elder to the youngest fetus, from the gutters of the ghetto. We were wise like the phoenix, reconnected to the double-headed serpent helix. Believe it.
Yeah.
Go, Chella. And how does this work intersect with gentrification?
How do you mean what?
How does your work around violence, and particularly sexual and racial violence, intersect with the question of gentrification of the neighborhood?
Well, because it's very violent, like we're getting displaced, and that's also violent. You know what I'm saying? Like when you talk about the fact that we're women on bicycles navigating, right? And we're reclaiming our power and our ability to navigate, and then you bring into it the fact that we're facing gentrification on some you know, like where space and being able to navigate is being blocked, right? Or we're being displaced, or we're being forced out of our community. It's very much related, right?
Ovarian Psychos. You can get more information at our website, including how to contribute to the group or start your own.
Right.
Thanks.